The final updates for Age of Wonders 4's first year of post-launch content are here. The Mystic update for free, as well as the Eldritch Realms DLC. Here are my top 10 big changes. First up, the new map layer, the Umbral Abyss, operating a lot like the Underground. A new tactical map layer, 3 of course now in total inside of the game. This one, obviously a bit of a dark domain, corruption, fear, and it's also filled with a slightly different type of city-state, if you will. In this case, the Umbral dwellings, inhabited by Umbral demons, and engaging with them works a little bit differently. The entire world around it, indeed spreading into the overworld too, could be covered with gloom, a nasty terrain feature that will hurt most people unless you've adapted yourself to it. The gloom can also, as you can see, be spread to the surface world, spreading its instability and fear as it rolls through. Living inside of the Abyss, as I've already mentioned, these Umbral dwellings work a little bit differently. You can indeed get an Eldritch Pact with them, though you can't give them a Whispering Stone. You'll have to trade some other resources to gain their favor, and if you do, the cooperation looks extra sweet, allowing you to spend Imperium to buy specific spells, or trade as usual. This will give you some access to some pretty neat new Umbral units. And finally, if you do get the Eldritch Pact, you'll also be immune to the harm that the Abyss might normally cause units venturing through it. In my opinion, it's kind of a no-brainer to buddy up with them in the Umbral Abyss. It only brings good things. You don't have to use them, but you might as well have the extra security that it provides. Moving through to number 2, this is realm setup options inside of the Eldritch Realms DLC. Don't worry, there'll be free stuff to come too. There is a new challenge if you'd like to take it. I've already played it, got the gameplay video on my channel if you'd like to go and check that out, a shameless plug. But there's a little bit more to unpack here than just a challenge realm. Of course, it brings the Abyss with it, as you would expect, but there are also 2 new ways to customize the way that you look, with 2 new forms, the Insectoid, the first one, and Siron the second. Of course, like all of the other forms that have been added into Age of Wonders 4, these are purely cosmetic. But of course, the cosmetic changes aren't actually the big ones as far as customizing a ruler. But firstly, something for the free update folk out there. I'd be amiss to not first mention the free changes. Unknown Realms. This one is actually very quick. We'll spend basically no time on this at all. Unknown Realms are now a feature, launching a new game inside of Age of Wonders 4. I think a much needed one too. When you start a new game, you can venture into the unknown. All realm traits will be hidden, gradually revealed, and unknown traits can also be added to specific custom realms. So if you don't want to pick 1 or 2 traits, you can just have a question mark, an unknown, and the game will randomly fill it in and keep it hidden. This is a kind of fairly simple, straightforward, and in my opinion, much needed quality of life change, alongside many more balanced changes and fixes that rolled out in the free update. But we need to return to the Eldritch Realms for the big bad boy of the feature, the new rulers, right? The new Godir type that's been introduced. The Eldritch Sovereign. The Eldritch Sovereign, the 4th type now, if you're playing in the fully expanded version, have special thralls, a kind of currency that can be used to cast specific, to them, powerful ritual spells. They also start with a ritual, and you can enthrall your population to generate some of those thralls, and generally speaking, they'll have a high mana upkeep cost, as well as, of course, some unique features to themselves. You can choose to add the Umbral Disciples to them for the full-on flavor effect of setting up a new Eldritch Sovereign if you like, and they are absolutely ginormous. They of course have their own unique upgrades, and actually not just those upgrades to begin with, but as you move through you'll find more and more and more depth to unpack. Your base equipment will be a relic, base upkeep in mana, and as you get more skills through their specific tree, you'll start to find these signature abilities, moving right the way up to level 16. The Eldritch rulers, these new sovereign sort of Godir types, are one of my favorite changes in the DLC personally. Like a lot of the things in the DLC, I think they work pretty well, and of course they align very well with the free update changes. Here you can see me casting the very first ritual, often always operating basically like world spells. This one points me to the nearest, potentially, Umbral Infestation, something for me to clear out at the start of the game. Kind of useful, they get more useful as you move through, but I think this specific customization is actually the best part here. You can also, if you wish, use your thralls in other way, like engaging with the in-game events. And these Eldritch Sovereigns are probably going to want to make the most of the 3 new Tomes of Magic inside of the DLC. The first one that you can start with, because it's right at the beginning, is the Tome of Tentacles, introducing lots of different ways to use tentacles to solve your problems. Moving through to the next one, maybe the more interesting one, this is where the Gloomstrider transformation is based inside of the Tome of Corruption. Tier 3 tome, again leaning into the same 2 affinities as the first tome, the Tome of Tentacles. This one, particularly cool, turning your enemies' strength against them. There's some buffs, some debuffs, all of that kind of good stuff. And the final Tome of Magic, the Cleansing Flame, will allow you to burn those heretics, and some different affinities that you can pick up inside of this one too. Also inside of the tomes, units, and these units will be affected by the free update unit reworks that rolled out. 2 things that I'd like to highlight in particular here. Unit recruitment is now tied to city structures. A town hall at tier 3, for example, unlocks tier 3 units. Town hall at tier 4 and 5 units. This adds quite a difficulty to the game, as you might have to build that a little faster than you might have liked, unboosted. It potentially adds some frustrating efficiencies to the way that you'll play through. More importantly, and moreover, unit ranks have also been adjusted. Unit now obtains stats that make them a little bit more competitive against higher ranks. In other words, to generally summarize the changes here, I believe that 1 and 2 units will often be much better. They've across the board received a little bit of a buff. It's not just them, extra hit points laced across the different ranks. Elite, Legend rank getting 10 hit points, some armor and resistance right up at the top there too. Overall, I think this is a good win for generally cheaper units, and it might make your unit construction a little bit more difficult as you move through into the mid-game. Let's now move through into my next list item, the Cosmic Happenings event system. This will be the last one as part of the paid DLC that I'll be covering. The Cosmic Events sort of happening system is a global event system. It includes 4 what they've called mini crisis events, or Toll of Seasons. The Toll of Seasons will basically cast this event on the map. It'll play through in a few different stages, and you'll probably find that the seasons, the spreading mists, will eventually attack you, or maybe somebody else on the map. You can engage with them a little bit with some events leading up to these catastrophic things. Here you can see one where I can choose to delay it for a little bit, or maybe improve my draft. I'm gonna do none of those things. You do get a nice little warning, and you can track it by the victory conditions, so it shouldn't catch you by too much of a surprise, though you will need to be aware, because massive armies, maybe around 1,000 strength, will turn up from around the early mid-game, so keep that in mind. You'll also want to keep in mind the new free feature, the Combat Takeover. With Control AI's option enabled, you can automatically take over units from AI allied forces during manual combat now. This also extends into multiplayer, with multiplayer takeover. When that's enabled, players can step in and out to take control of AI units, again in manual combat against players. If multiple players agree to the takeover, the system picks one at random, prioritizing those with the worst diplomatic relationship with the human already in combat. You can turn these things on or off and find the settings inside of Advanced Setup and then Combat. Speaking of combat, one part of that will be a very big free rework that I can't believe I've left this late in the video. It's the Mystic rework. More specifically, the Schools of Magic. Though Astral Echoes have also been changed a little bit, changed from a token to a resource income now, with echoes across the map and being available to you by completing research. Moreover though, it's this part that is quite exciting. As you can see, the Mystic culture has been divided into 3 different schools now: Attunement, Potential, and Summoning. And the game actually does a great job at summarizing it. The full patch notes will be linked below if you want to jump into them and see all of the unique units and skills and combat modifiers. But in essence, the tooltip actually gives you a pretty good description. What you'll get, what you'll be able to exploit, and your specific little special thing. The School of Potential specializes in experimentation, spellcasting over combat, while summoning relies on immensely powerful origin units. The first school attunement is closely related to what we used to use. You can kind of think of that a bit more like the default one. These changes, again, just absolutely massive, right? Another big shift, rework inside of an Age of Wonders 4 free update. And I don't think that these ones disappoint. Important to note, there'll be a bit of unpacking in and around balance, and indeed, they've already started working on that kind of stuff with a hotfix update that's just came out at the time of recording this video. But nonetheless, I think that this is one of the more significant changes, maybe the most significant change to the free update. But it's not the final thing in my video. One more point to cover, and I have to admit, honestly, this one is just slightly a little bit of a cop-out. It's kind of, well, it's the rest, okay? And the rest begins with a change to the Pantheon. They've expanded it in previous updates. They've gone back and added even more ways to gain experience, forging items, completing bounties, as well as more experience generally for actions like vassalizing an empire, conquering a city, victory bonus, so on and so forth. The quality of life improvements don't stop there. They stretched across, as you've probably come to expect, with Triumph Studios' free updates even for Age of Wonders 4 across every realm of the game. Item forge blueprints now have a memory within games, rulers can be filtered more easily, and a whole load of tweaks to things like difficulty, combat AI, music, cultures, and culture balancing. Again, I'll have the full patch notes linked below, but these have been my quick highlight features. I hope that you enjoyed this update. I realize 1 or 2 days late to the piece, but hopefully it was still an interesting watch. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.